Welcome, Gunrunner.
I don't think anyone can deny that the Sega Mega Drive, or Genesis for the North Americans, is one of the greatest consoles of all time. It sold over 40 million units across the world, introduced us to now classic franchises like Sonic the Hedgehog and Streets of Rage, and took part in one of the greatest battles of all time against the rival Super Nintendo. So unlike many of the other amazing exclusives videos that I've done, this isn't an episode where I need to convince you of the system's worth. But when you have such a successful console with a library of over 800 games, a whole new challenge presents itself. How on earth can you choose just 10 exclusives from a seemingly endless list of classics? Believe me when I say it was bloody hard. No doubt this one will leave lots of people screaming at the screen about games I left out, so I apologise in advance for that, but hey, I guess that leaves plenty of potential for a follow-up video. So let's get going with this list of 10 amazing Sega Mega Drive exclusives.
Hey, you. Now, sir.
Give me the Cyber Razor Cut.
Cyber Razor Gun.
Yeah!
There are over 100 Mega Drive games. They get faster, they get harder.
What are you going to do to keep up?
To be this good, thanks Sega.
When talking about games that prove the Mega Drive can more than match the perceived technical superiority of the rival Super Nintendo, Red Zone is one of the first you'll hear mentioned. This simply sublime pseudo 3D shooter features a number of techniques that we thought impossible on the stock 16-bit Sega, including Mode 7 style scaling and rotation, as well as full motion video in the intro. It's also a game that combines two separate gameplay characteristics, as the levels split between shoot 'em up sections and top-down dungeon crawler-like stages, reminding me a bit of the classic Loaded. There's also a hidden bonus game in the computer terminals where you can play a green screen version of the vintage Atari arcade game Asteroids. There are multiple characters you can switch between, a range of different weapons, and a handy password feature too. While I enjoy both the gameplay styles, it's the top-down shoot 'em up sections that really steal the show here. You won't quite believe that the Mega Drive could even do something like this, especially when it plays so well too. It's probably a bit unfair to keep banging on about the graphics, as Red Zone also has an absolutely fantastic soundtrack too. You probably won't be surprised to learn that developers Syrinx, who were a studio of Scavenger Inc., came from the Commodore Amiga demos. Both developed and released in Japan by Game Arts, Alysia Dragoon was picked up for Sega for the West, and despite not being perceived as a big name release, it soon garnered a hugely positive reputation. It's easy to see why, as this side-scrolling arcade adventure has a lot going for it, from the stunning visuals to the highly original gameplay mechanics. It also wins points for going with a sole female protagonist that bears a pretty close resemblance to Tyrus Slayer from Golden Axe on the game's cover. Alysia herself is armed with the ability to shoot lightning from her hand to defeat the enemies she encounters across the game's 8 levels. However, this power is quite limited and loses effectiveness as it's deployed, so you'll need to rest your hands to let it recharge, especially if you're nearing an end of level boss. But this isn't the only power up that Alysia has at her disposal. There's also a selection of 4 pet monsters that can be deployed to help her in a quest to avenge her father's death. Both your own lightning ability and the effectiveness of your pets can be improved by collecting power-ups. You can also collect icons that boost the health of both Alysia and her monsters. If a monster gets killed, it can be brought back by collecting a revival potion. Alysia Dragoon certainly isn't an easy game, but it's a very rewarding one that impresses on almost every level. Dragon's Fury on the Mega Drive is for me one of the best games ever made. It's pure pinball perfection with both realistic physics and a fantasy element that would not be possible on a real pinball table. The original creators Compile never made a third game in this series. The first was Alien Crush on the PC Engine, so Tengen, who had released the Mega Drive version of Dragon's Fury in the US and Europe, chose to make their own one to cash in on the success of the games. Sadly, it doesn't quite hit the heights of its illustrious predecessor, but it's not all bad, as this is still a very good game in its own right. It follows exactly the same theme, with one giant table loaded with all sorts of ramps, bumpers and gruesome enemies, waiting to be taken out with a big steel ball. Dragon's Revenge also features all new bonus stages, one of the best parts of the other games, and these look even better than they did in the prequel. They're simply stunning, and you almost struggle to believe how they got MD graphics looking this good. The rest of the visuals in the game are also of a very high standard, and they're accompanied by great sound effects and music too. Anyone who loved the previous games in the series is going to love this one too, and you'll find it's also a little more challenging than the other 2 titles also. It's not pinball perfection, but it's pretty darn close to it. Known as Mazin Saga outside of Europe, this game is based upon the manga series of the same name, which itself was a reboot of the hugely popular Mazinger Z. This game is fairly unique for several reasons that I will shortly go into. Firstly, it mixes traditional scrolling beat-em-up stages with one-on-one boss fights featuring some of the largest sprites you'll see in any Mega Drive game. Secondly, the programmers use special tricks to show more than the standard 64 colours on the screen, meaning it looks absolutely gorgeous. All in all, there are 6 of these bosses to get through before you can complete the game, and will all be recognisable to fans of the franchise. You play as a warrior in a special armoured suit that can enlarge him in size to battle the super beasts, and then shrink him back again, a bit like Ant-Man. You are armed with a sword and use this as well as your body parts to battle the bad guys. The scrolling stages play out very much like a standard scrolling beat-em-up, with an array of different enemies, hazards to avoid and objects to pick up. Your character relies on a large health bar, and this becomes especially important in the boss battles. The graphics here are also some of the best you'll see in any Mega Drive game, and the soundtrack is excellent too. Mazin Walls also controls great and has a perfectly pitched difficulty curve. For me, this is one of the most underrated games on the Mega Drive. If we were to compile a list of the most iconic Mega Drive games ever, there is absolutely no doubting that one of the first games to get a mention would be Revenge of Shinobi. Mega Drive exclusive, it was the sequel to the famous Sega arcade game and known as Super Shinobi in Japan. It was also particularly notable for having a soundtrack by Yuzo Koshiro of Streets of Rage fame, and amazing it is too. It doesn't just stop with the music though, everything about this game just oozes quality. It takes in a mix of game styles, taking elements from arcade adventures, platform games and scrolling beat-em-ups and combining them into one near-perfect package. Joe Musashi sets out to save his girlfriend from the evil Neo Zed, taking in a variety of locations from an ancient temple to a fast-moving highway. As well as being able to use his feet and fists, Joe is armed with a limited amount of throwing knives and can perform 4 different types of secret ninjutsu magic, providing he has acquired it during the level that is. This can be found by destroying crates, which will also reveal other useful objects such as extra knives, health and power-ups. But be careful because some will contain time bombs that can go off any second. The graphics are stunning throughout Revenge of Shinobi, and the gameplay, while very challenging, has an almost perfect difficulty curve. A true Mega Drive must-have. As soon as you hear the words techno-soft and shoot 'em up in the same sentence, you know that you need to pay attention. The Japanese software house rarely did anything wrong when it came to this genre on the Mega Drive, and Elemental Master is yet another great example of their prowess. Along with the ever popular Thunder Force series of course. Unlike their more famous creation, this one takes on a vertically scrolling perspective and also differs greatly from the usual shoot 'em up fare by being neither set in space or featuring any kind of flying ships, aliens or aircraft. Instead, this game adopts a fantasy theme with you controlling a magic spewing wizard, taking out all sorts of gruesome monsters and mystical creatures on your way to an evil sorcerer's castle. Once there, you must defeat him to save the land from the grip of evil once and for all. There are 7 levels in total to work through, and you are able to choose the order of the first 4, which is a really nice touch. All the power-ups in the game are based around natural elements, and some are pretty spectacular. When it comes to the visuals, Elemental Master is a joy to behold, and the fantasy setting really helps set things off. The soundtrack was composed by Toshiharu Yamanishi, who also did Technosoft's other games and is equally accomplished. This is easily one of my favourite shooters available for the Mega Drive. For me personally, Gauntlet is one of the finest arcade games ever made. I will never forget the first time I saw that 4-player cabinet on display at Butlins in Margate, with its big stereo speakers booming out that speech. I was barely tall enough to reach the controls, but I just had to play it. I later bought the terrific conversions of both the ZX Spectrum and Atari ST, but there's no doubt that the Gauntlet IV for the Mega Drive is the ultimate Gauntlet game. We have all the characters, all the enemies, all the levels, and all the special items from the first 2 Gauntlet games. We also have the 4-player mode intact too. All you need is a Mega Tap adapter. But then we have a whole host of new features on top of that just adds the icing to the cake. The best of these is the RPG-like 1-player quest mode. Gauntlet was always much better as a multiplayer game, but this mode changes that and gives the game a whole new perspective. There's also a combative battle mode and the challenging record mode to get your teeth into too. You really couldn't have asked them to put more into this package. The graphics look as good as ever with detailed levels, well animated sprites and fast scrolling. The sound is a real treat with tons of great sound effects and digitised speech. If you own a Mega Drive, then this game should already be in your collection, and if it isn't, then why not?
Try this level now. Welcome.
Originally designed and developed by Japanese company Sims, OutRun 2019 started off life as an original racing game called Junkers High, but Sega spotted an opportunity they could capitalise on and, after being impressed by an early demo, licensed the game from Sims and rebranded it as the new OutRun game. This caused a bit of a stink in the press when it was released, as they felt this was a cop-out, and the game was reviewed poorly because of that. But the treatment of OutRun 2019 was extremely unfair, as it is actually a highly accomplished arcade-style driving game that really shows off the power of the 16-bit hardware. Unlike the first sequel, Turbo OutRun, this game also brings back the multiple routes of the original OutRun and retains the turbo feature. It also has some new and exciting features of its own, such as roads suspended in the air, ramps to jump off, and special conditions that affect your car. Like previous games in the ever-popular franchise, OutRun 2019 also has an absolutely fantastic soundtrack that really suits the futuristic setting. The sense of speed is astounding here, and I can't think of another Mega Drive game that is as fast and smooth. If we are talking about hidden gems in the Mega Drive library, then I struggle to think of anything that's more deserving of the accolade than OutRun 2019. This is a must-have title for all racing game fans. If you ask me to name my favourite Mega Drive games, the best Genesis hidden gems, or indeed the most technically impressive titles for the 16-bit Sega, then you'd find Shinobi entered on all of those lists. Although it could easily be dismissed as just another horizontally scrolling shooter on a system that already has outstanding titles like Zero Wings, Sagaya and the Thunderfall series, Shinobi actually stands above with its own unique features. Firstly, there is the theme. Rather than being another generic space-based affair, this one has you controlling a winged eagle called War, who is trying to end the rule of an evil demon called Icarus in a mystical world. Each of the stages takes place in a unique environment including deep underwater, a cavernous temple, and the inside of a giant mechanical ship. As if the variation of levels wasn't already enough, the range of awesome power-ups and incredible end-of-level bosses up the ante even further. And if all of this didn't already impress, the visuals in Shinobi will blow you away at times, as Messiah put every trick out the book to keep your eyeballs interested. The soundtrack is dark, brooding and perfectly pitched to the game too. There's certainly no shortage of shoot 'em ups on the Mega Drive. It's certainly a lot better equipped than the rival SNES in this department, but dare I say it, Shinobi is the very best of them all. It's impossible to underestimate the impact of Sonic the Hedgehog on the gaming industry. It turned Sega almost overnight from just another player to the undisputed king of the video game industry. Sega's reign might not have lasted, but Sonic's legacy has. He still remains one of our favourite video game icons, and the recent film vehicle made for him was absolutely fantastic. The release of the sequel broke sales records as well as the speed barrier. It managed to improve on the first game in almost every way, and Sonic was now joined by a friend in Miles Tails Prower, a fox with two tails who could also be controlled, albeit in a limited capacity, by a second player. Many of the more sadistic gamers out there will remember killing him in most spectacular fashion, only for him to reappear moments later. But that wasn't the only key feature that Sonic 2 added that will become a staple of the series. This game will also introduce us to the spin attack, which added even more speed to an already lightning fast game. Standard levels are quite similar, but we do have a new bonus stage, the technically impressive pseudo 3D half-pipe dash. I have to confess that I'm not particularly fond of platform games, but even I can resist the charms of Sonic 2. In fact, it's probably the best platform game ever, and one of the best reasons out there to own a Sega Mega Drive or Genesis.
Listen up! Sonic 2 is here with 10 levels and a fresh new half-pipe. A casino zone, his new buddy Tails, and blast processing, which makes him faster than ever. With awesome new graphics, the new split screen lets 2 play, and a spin dash that can be startling. I love doing that. New Sonic 2 for Sega Genesis and Game Gear, each sold separately.
And that rounds up my look at the best exclusives available for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. Are there any others you can think of that should have made the list? Or do you disagree with any of the entries that I did include? As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts and views, so get typing in that comments section. Before I go though, I must thank all of my loyal patrons for continuing to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following patrons in particular for their much appreciated pledges: Mitchell Valentino, Neptune, Seth A. Robinson, Carl Olsen, Dos Gamer Man, Nathan Davino and Electron Star Collapse. If you also want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now. You can get access to host for extra content, including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights and much more besides. I've been the Laird, I thank you for watching and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.